I think running's quite boring if it's just you and running along. Bring diabetes into it, it turns into F1 where you've got to change the tyres and you've got to decide when you're going for the pit lane. When you're running, you've got to think, right, I'm gonna have the jelly babies now, or I'm gonna I'm gonna have the bar. You've got to make those kind of choices to kind of keep your levels.
Hi Gavin, welcome to the Via Diabetes interview series. It's great to have you.
Thanks, Olivia. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Could you please give us your diagnosis story and how you manage your diabetes on a day-to-day basis?
I was diagnosed when I was 8 years old. Just before the Christmas holidays, these symptoms had started. I'd had a flu virus. Everyone in my house, mum, dad, sister, were all off work or sick for a week or two. For me, it changed from the sniffing and the coughing and whatever else to then needing to go to the toilet, being thirsty, being very tired and all those symptoms of type 1 diabetes, having never heard of the condition before. It was hard to get a GP appointment with Christmas and all that, so it wasn't until January 2000 that I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. I remember being rushed into the hospital. I was there for a week. You're not going to welcome a medical condition into your life too easily. But I remember my first question to the doctor being, can I still play football? Can I still play sports? Because that's all I cared about at that time. And the answer wasn't yes, and this is how. It wasn't positive, it wasn't encouraging, it was more medical language and stuff I didn't understand and not interesting for me. From that moment, I really turned off in terms of wanting to learn and look after myself.
Did you struggle then with the mental health side of diabetes? And if so, how did you overcome that?
I did struggle, particularly when I was younger. It's difficult, but there was a few names that I was called, and when those names were associated to my diabetes, that's what got to me. That's where I responded. If it was something else, I wouldn't have responded. I may have called a name back or something like that. But when it was a diabetes-related insult, I got into fights. I got into a dark place in maybe pre-teen years. And it wasn't noticeable because I wouldn't have spoke about it. I wouldn't have said to my parents how I was feeling. I wouldn't have said to my sister. I wouldn't have said to my friends because I wanted to fit in. So I didn't really know who to go to. I didn't want to add stress to anybody else. And I didn't know how to deal with it. I was a bit suicidal. I did have an attempt and it thankfully didn't happen. But my life started to change a little bit in a good way as well. I think I started to find confidence again shortly after that. Got my first girlfriend at that time, so that starts to change how you feel about yourself, I think. I was always playing football and I started to, I guess, get noticed. Actually, I was quite talented at football around other kids in school. And then right at the end of school, there was a school trip and we were looking after the year 7s, the young kids. And one of them had diabetes there and he was having a real tantrum about he had a hypo and stuff. And so the teacher came and got me to look after him. And I think that was a real transition point because I felt quite sad to see him like that. But I also saw myself, decided from there I wanted to fundraise. I wanted to start up a local support group with a couple of other people for young adults with type 1 diabetes to have meetups. Probably I was about 16 or 17 years old at that time, so I was still a kid. And then one thing to the other, I started to then fundraise, run the marathons, run 30 marathons, and then start a charity, meet people overseas.
I learned about you through the 30 marathons that you ran in 30 days, which is incredible. My first question about that is, what made you want to do that?
In 2008, I did my first marathon challenge. And I think I did that because I really wanted to prove a point. Maybe in that time, there wasn't so much encouragement, particularly I think exercise and stuff was a little bit more unknown. There was a lot more question marks and me being quite sporty, loving football, loving all kinds of sports. I guess I kind of felt kind of frustrated about that. And I guess I wanted to do something kind of big to make a statement of what you can do in a positive way with type 1 diabetes. For some reason, John O'Groats to Land's End, the top of Scotland to the bottom of England, was something that was on my challenge mind. It's not easy to run a marathon, but I think when you've got people around you that get it and support you and cheer you on, as it is with a medical condition, when you've got your loved ones nearby helping you through it, it gives you that extra energy, I think, to get through.
How did you not get burnout from managing your diabetes on top of running that much in such a short period?
If anything, diabetes makes running interesting. I think running's quite boring if it's just you and running along and, you bring diabetes into it, it turns into F1. You got to, like in Formula 1 where you've got to change the tyres and you've got to decide when you're going for the pit lane. When you're running, you've got to think, right, I'm gonna have the jelly babies now, or I'm gonna have the bar. Crazy challenge, I know, but I actually felt like I was more in control of my condition. I probably have more hypos on a week where I'm not active than I do when I am active because obviously my eyes are always on the levels. I didn't get burnt out mainly because of the community. and because the running became quite interesting to follow what was going on. But I think it's easy to get burnt out in other areas of life. In school, I think that was where I struggled much more mentally, psychologically with having a medical condition. Also that transition into adulthood, you're going out, socializing, drinking and stuff like that, and perhaps being a lot less responsible. So for me, those were the patches of my life where I felt burnt out. And actually when I got the ability to go and run and stuff, that shows confidence, that shows that I was actually in a better place because I was willing to do those things.
I wanted to ask you why you found the League of Diabetes, and also what kind of work the charity does that might be slightly different to other charities in this space.
It started actually on the back of when I ran the 30-30 challenge all those years ago, and seeing what I saw, that the communities coming along, smiles on faces, with something to do with diabetes. Since about 2014, before we became a charity, I started to do meetups with NHS teams, paediatric teams, and I did game-based learning workshops for the youth age groups. You're playing games to learn about the diabetes, so it could be basketball or football or anything that's kind of more of an activity. But you're playing the role like attack versus defense, insulin versus carbs, or so it's more fun to learn. I think about 2019 we became a charity. We registered initially under Diathlete, but we'd already started this League of Diabetes name as well, based from international collaborations. We'd started to do a conference over here in the UK and share awareness about diabetes, particularly in lower resource countries. So yeah, from there, that's where the League of Diabetes name came in. We'd registered as a charity Diathlete, but that sounded very sporty. So now League of Diabetes is really kind of taken over as we carry on with the game-based learning stuff every now and then with the NHS teams that request it. But in addition to that, we have a festival. That's our main, I guess, event each year is the T1D Festival. It's something we really want to grow. It's going to be on the 19th of July in Greenwich this year. But yeah, long term, I want it to be an outdoor festival. I want it to be more music involved, and the Glastonbury of diabetes is what we're striving for on the long run. We mix like panels and people speaking about their stories with niche topics, and then blend that with some music or even a fashion show that takes place. And then aside from that, we also have, which will be in September this year, there's a camp called Camp Phoenix, and it's for adults, where we feel adult care perhaps doesn't really get the time, I don't think, available as in paediatric care, when it particularly comes to the well-being side, the day-to-day management, the burnout area.
You mentioned that you do some collaborations overseas. What kind of work have you done?
I began collaborating and understanding that there was a world outside my window. Probably in 2013, for the first time, I became a young leader representing the UK in the International Diabetes Federation. Yeah, about a year or so later, started to then collaborate with a few of those in different countries. I was invited to Romania, even though they're in Europe. In Romania, their healthcare was very different. At that time, you were looking at the government providing you with one test strip per day to manage your diabetes and your analog insulins. Outside of that, it's out of your own pocket. That was a real eye-opener for me early on, just in Europe alone. And the differences there that we see. Been to Ghana a couple of times. There's a great association there called Diabetes Youth Care. I first went to Ghana in 2015. I got a friend called Fred that wanted me to come, so I did. Eye-opening as well, though, and very sad in cases. There's a number of young people at that time that I met in 2015, 11 years later, that are no longer with us. They don't have access to what we have access to. It's often relying on outside associations to maybe give them anything for free. If not, anything comes out of your own pocket. Some remarkable associations are helping in. One of them is Sonia the Better Foundation from within Africa itself, going across multiple countries. During the COVID times, there was only one qualified diabetes expert in the whole country. It's a different world compared to Europe or anywhere else, really.
On that note, do you think there's anything in the UK, either from the government or from businesses, that could help you with your diabetes management?
There's always something. I think the first thing you often hear is postcode lottery. Years ago, I remember kind of campaigning a bit in my local borough of London where I grew up, because we only got 4 test strips a day provided at that time, compared to the rest of London and the boroughs where I knew 10 test strips were provided. Now we've moved on a lot, okay? We're in technology talks, and most people have access to the sensors at least, right? But quite often people are getting sensors that don't work with the pump. You have to meet a criteria in order to get there. So yeah, for me, that's short-term thinking over the long-term gains of fund them. It's not going to be that much more expensive to get the right match of sensor and pump together. compared to what you're already funding. So I'd like to see more universal care across the UK, if you like, as opposed to the postcode lottery. Very hard to say because there's so many different trusts that therefore work differently across different regions. But yeah, and then I also feel then the mental health side is something that could do with support.
Could you tell us about your book, The Chronicles of Glycemia, and without giving too much away, of course, what it's about and maybe where people can buy it if they're interested?
It's on my shelf there. Probably the only one that's been sold. I've really tried to be open, not paint over any cracks about my story, and particularly those areas I just mentioned, you know, what are really personal, really did struggle, but to also then give a direction in that, to show positivity, to show support and lessons learned perhaps along the way. So I'd say it does focus more on the mental health side again of diabetes care. It gives an insight into how I was at that time. So it starts from my diagnosis as an 8-year-old, and it continues until I meet an international audience after running the 30-30 challenge. The other side of that is also my mother's perspective. I caught a diary from her when I was diagnosed. She used to write pages and pages and pages and pages to then give to the diabetes team. It's maybe a difficult read in parts because of some of those sadder stories, but hopefully one that gives a bigger picture of what type 1 diabetes is, not just what it is in terms of, you know, directly what is insulin and stuff. I mean, there is a bits of information in there, but also that emotional journey of type 1 diabetes is captured in there. You can get it on Amazon. Yeah, I think that's probably the main place to go. If you type in The Chronicles of Glycemia, you might see a link to it on my socials as well.
If you wanted to share a key kind of piece of advice for someone just been diagnosed with diabetes, what would that be?
Don't hide away from who you are, which is so easy to do. That's something that I did after being diagnosed, was trying to put up a shield, rebel a bit against living with it. Your life hasn't changed. You're still the same person that you've always been, and the best of you is always still to come. It's okay to feel that difficulty. It's okay to feel that frustration. Let it out. Talk to people about it. Don't keep it all on the inside. So don't give up. Keep being you, because that hasn't changed.
Thank you, Gavin. That's great advice. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to meet you and hear about your story. Thank you for everything.
Thanks, Olivia. Thanks for having me.